giving you the insider takes and the big picture view on the Dogs. This is On the Beat, presented by Ingles, with Dog Nation insider Mike Griffith and Cody Chapins.
Hello, Dog Nation, and welcome into On the Beat. I am not Cody Chapins. I am Kaylee Mansell with Mike Griffith this week here on the Beat. I don't want to give too much away, but I have to give all credit to Mike because we're going to have Josh Brooks on later in the show. What a five-star guest, Mike.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to the athletic director. Can you believe he's in his fifth year already, Kaylee?
No, and I mean, look at the amount of success that he's already had under him. We'll talk about that later on in the show when he comes up. But first, we're going to start with some rankings because we're at that point in the preseason where teams are finalized and everybody's got something to say about everything. So we're going to take a look at two different rankings lists today. The first one is going to be On3, rank their top 100 players for this upcoming college football season. Georgia only had two players on the list. C.J. Allen comes in at 91. Christian Miller comes in at 96. So out of the 100 guys they view to be the top players in college football, Georgia only has two on the list. What does that say about the roster that Georgia has for the 2025 season?
Well, to be fair, I mean, all these sorts of lists are subjective, and a lot of it is based on last year's production. And, of course, we know Georgia just lost 13 guys to the NFL draft.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a lot of playing time and a lot of production to replace. So it doesn't mean that they don't have the best players, in my opinion. It just means they haven't been on the field or had the opportunity to step up and be next man up yet. So I do think these rankings are more based on last year maybe than projection. I know when you do these sort of lists, you've got to have some sort of metrics to work in. They put a lot of time and effort into it. I'm not trying to poo-poo the list, but I'm trying to explain why Georgia wouldn't have the same number of players as maybe other programs would. Great example last year, Jalen Walker. I mean, he wasn't on the top 100 list for them, and yet he steps in and becomes the number 15 overall pick in the draft and team captain. Everybody's All-American. So at Georgia, it's a matter of opportunity, playing time. I think you're going to see the results. And, I can think of, three or four more guys right now I'd put in the top 100 from Georgia.
Yeah, because sometimes it's not always about who's on the list, but more so who's not on it. I was looking at their list from last year. So there were 5 Georgia players on last year's top 100. Now, 4 of those guys have either transferred or moved on to the draft, but there was one player who was Ernest Green, who was ranked at number 50 on last year's list, but isn't on this year's list. So what does that say about how they viewed him last year versus this year?
Well, Ernest was injured last year and he missed some time. And, we recently had Cole Kubelik. We did a story with Cole, and when he commented that he thought Georgia would have the best offensive line in the SEC, largely because he expects Ernest Green to return to form, as he looked before the injury. And that's going to be big for the Dogs. Obviously, you got Monroe Freeling out there. He's going to have more experience. So you've got 2 positions right there, with just by having guys that are healthier and more experienced will be better. Now, we know they lost 3 very good interior offensive linemen, but Drew Bobo's played a lot of snaps, and everybody's excited about Michael Moore. So I think everyone feels that the Georgia offensive line's moving in the right direction. Certainly they can't be as snake bit with injuries as they were a year ago when each guy in their starting line missed at least a week with injuries. And Tate Ratledge was out for an extended amount of time with the ankle, but required the tightrope surgery. So, I would put Ernest Green was one of those guys I was thinking of that I would say would be in the top 100. I think you said he was 50 last year.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably around 50 this year, provided he's healthy, which all indications are that he will be.
So again, C.J. Allen comes in at 91. Christian Miller comes in at 96, both towards the bottom of the list. I mean, Mike, are those the 2 best players on the Georgia football team? Or are those the 2 guys that you would have put on that list?
Well, there are 2 guys I would put on the list. And again, it depends on how much of it I'm trying to base it off of last year's performances versus my projections. So, I look at next year and I say, hey, a guy like Dalen Everett, he's going to be lights out. I look at a guy like KJ Bolden. I think he's going to be 1 year better, and he was already outstanding as a true freshman. You can look at Branch, the receiver, and how effective do you think he'll be coming into this offense as perhaps, the go-to guy. You look at Lawson Lucky, and how many more opportunities might he have in this offense now, and the way he's matured and improved as we saw in the G-Day game. So those are just a few of the names. Chris Cole flashed. I mean, it's not a big jump to wonder if Chris Cole might be a guy that could jump into that top 100, or Raylan Wilson. I mean, he's got as much experience as CJ does. So, kind of thinking that's another guy. So a lot of this kind of all goes together as the team goes. Maybe some recency bias. Georgia didn't finish in the best game against Notre Dame. They're kind of a beat up team at that point, and obviously there were some things going on the periphery with Coach Smart and his father that you can't help but think might have had some sort of effect. So I'm not panicked by that list. If I'm a Georgia fan, I kind of look at it like, okay, yeah. And, I go back to 2021 and the no stars defense, right? They didn't have any USA Today, didn't pick any Georgia players, offense or defense, on their first team All SEC before 2021. And they go out and win a national title and throw down a defense that's of legacy stature, 6.9 points per game in the regular season, the lowest since 86 Oklahoma. But nobody was first team All SEC going in. So we've seen Kirby Smart do this before where there's a lot of talent. Now that said, we have talked about it, and we kind of wonder how other positions could affect the performance of these players, most notably the quarterback position.
Yeah, so I'm looking at that list. I think the names that surprised me the most that weren't even taken into consideration are KJ Bolden, just based amount of the star power he had coming out of high school and how much playing time that he got in a very veteran and experienced position group. I was also surprised to not see someone like Zach Branch or Noah Thomas on that list because of how much the national media has talked about the impact that they're going to make to the team. But I think something that you mentioned is that Jalen Walker was not a part of that list. So we're looking at who could be that Jalen Walker guy. For me, I think it's someone like Dalen Everett, who going into last season, I don't know that UGA fans looked at him like he was some star cornerback, but he ended up being the most consistent out of the two. Him coming back for this next year, I think it's going to do wonders for not just his draft stock, but we're going to see a lot of offseason improvement from Dalen Everett. I think he's going to be a lockdown corner.
Yeah, don't tell Quinn Ewers that people didn't know who he was. Quinn was able to find him with the ball a few times. And speaking of player rankings, I mean, just think about this. I mean, as effective as Quinn Ewers was at times for Texas, and he did beat Alabama and Tuscaloosa and pitched a perfect game pretty much a couple of years ago, Dan Jackson was drafted ahead of Quinn Ewers. That's the end takeaway. When it's all said and done, Dirty Dan got drafted ahead of Quinn. The guy didn't even get invited to the combine, got drafted ahead of the Texas starting quarterback.
I want that on a T-shirt. Dan Jackson got drafted before Quinn Ewers.
I'm sure the Texas fans would appreciate that.
But here's the thing about the rankings. I think that you kind of touched on this earlier, is that it's okay that there's not a lot of star power on this team, because when we look back at the no-name defense, it didn't look like they had a lot of star power either, but they did just enough and clicked at the right time to get the job done. Now we're going to look at some other rankings, and we've kind of done this ourselves, but with SEC quarterbacks. So this is going to be all about Brad Crawford's 247 top 50 quarterback rankings, and we're going to look at this from two different perspectives, the offensive perspective and the defensive perspective. So to kind of sum all this up, Georgia's going to face 8 of the top 50 quarterbacks. Gunnar Stockton comes in at number 42. So when we're looking at this from a defensive perspective, some of the guys that they had ranked high on that list was Arch Manning at 3, DJ Lagway at 7, Haynes King at 20s. Then you also have Ty Simpson, which I don't want to get into that because that is wild to me that he comes in at 24. We don't even know if he's going to be the starting quarterback. Also Jackson Arnold, Austin Simmons, Blake Shapen at Mississippi State, and Joey Aguilar all make that list. But looks like Georgia's going to face 3 of the top 20. So I guess that just only strengthens the argument that Georgia's schedule doesn't get any easier this year. Yeah, they're going to host some stronger teams at home, which is always an advantage, but still, it doesn't get much easier for the Dogs, or it doesn't get much more difficult than for the Dogs.
Yeah, well, you take a look at I guess the biggest change is you don't play Clemson in the opener, and Clemson looks like a preseason top 5, and Cade Klubnik, the number 1 quarterback coming in from a perception standpoint. That Clemson game would have been tough. There was a time we went back and said, oh, man, it's too bad they didn't make that a home and home. It's like, well, I guess maybe it worked out all right that you played one game in Atlanta last year and not this year. So, no, not that Georgia would ever, not want to play Clemson. That's such a fantastic game. But to your point, there's going to be a lot of talented quarterbacks on the other side of the ball. And the good news is I think Georgia's going to have a better defense than they did last year. We just talked about Dalen Everett and KJ Bolden in that secondary. Jonel Aguero, I thought, made huge strides, based on what I saw in the spring game. I mean, he was on top of everything and just knocking the snot out of people. So I'm excited about that. That other corner position, there's great competition going on there. Something good's going to some talented influx of safety transfers that could be competing for a job or pushing. So I think the secondary is going to be as good as it's been in a couple of years. I think the defensive line, We mentioned Christian Miller earlier. I like Xavier McLeod as well. Big baby on the verge of getting healthy, finally, Jordan Hall. So there's some good things going on with the interior defensive line. It's just a matter of kind of filling that, outside linebacker role. And there's plenty of talent there. I think, whether Gabe Harris plays end or there, they got the transfer from Army that a lot of people are taking a closer look at now going, man, this guy might be a lot better than people think. So kind of feel like that because of the Kirby Smart defenses, that these offensive quarterbacks may not be having their best afternoons when they face the Bulldogs.
Well, when we look at this from an offensive perspective, there's 50 guys on this list. Gunnar Stockton comes in at number 42 out of the 16 SEC quarterbacks. That is the 10th rated quarterback. And it's interesting to see the guys that Brad Crawford ranked ahead of them, because I know that you're not super high on Gunnar Stockton, but you've got guys like Ty Simpson at 24, who we don't even know if he's going to be the starting quarterback for Alabama. Austin Simmons at 33, and the main point was that he showed a lot of intrigue but doesn't have that same big-time game experience as Gunnar. And then kind of the randos that came in front, which really shows you how Brad Crawford views Gunnar, is you've got Devin Dampier at Utah, Aiden Childs, and then Chandler Morris at Virginia, who they said that he had a shaky season all last year. So the fact that they're putting these guys in front of Gunnar, it seems like they must have seen what they view as enough from him in the SEC championship in the game against Notre Dame to put a lot of these guys who don't have that playing time in front of him.
Yeah, it's tough to evaluate a quarterback on how they did against the Texas and Notre Dame defense. I mean, those are two of the best defense in college football.
Exactly.
And obviously there were some challenges at the receiver position, although I don't know that really, surfaced in those two games. Look, I mean, the bottom line is Gunnar is still an unproven entity. And if you're just going to evaluate him on Notre Dame and one half of the Texas game, even though they did beat Texas, there was some things lacking, right? And even in G-Day, misfired on some passes. Kirby called out his judgment. This is a fourth-year guy. I think it's time. Now, when Gunnar goes up against Marshall and Austin P, I think his numbers are going to look pretty good, Kaylee. So maybe, some of the concern will go away, but it's going to come down to what happens for Gunnar when he goes on the road and plays Tennessee, and when he comes home and plays Alabama between the hedges. That's going to foretell his future. I think Ryan Puglisi is pushing hard. We've heard Kirby in the offseason talk about Ryan's talent, the fact that he only really went through one spring. How fast can he get the offense once he does? Is he a challenge? When I look at the supporting pieces, though, when I look at that great defense, the way they bolstered their running back room, getting McCray from Illinois, the way they've added these receivers, I think it's a better supporting cast than what we saw last year in totality. Provided the offensive line comes together like we're projecting they will, like Cole Kubelik, who's the chairman of the Joe Moore Award, believes this will be the best offensive line in the SEC. If that proves correct, I think a lot of Gunners or Ryans or whomever is at quarterback, I think the numbers take care of themselves because you're not asking the quarterback to carry the team on his back. And I think oftentimes last year, that was a position we found Carson Beck in after some drop passes, put him in some difficult down and distances. And after the defense faltered and Georgia was forced to play from behind in a lot of games.
So I've got something for you. I know that you're not like the president of the Gunnar Stockton fan club or anything, and it doesn't sound like Brad Crawford is either. But when Cody Chaffins filled in for me last week on Dog Nation at Large, he had asked Connor, it's like a fact or fiction, Gunnar Stockton will start the first game for Georgia, but does Gunnar Stockton start the last game of the season for Georgia? Do you have any thoughts on that?
That's a tough one. And as far as Gunnar, I want to be clear on this because this is a guy everybody wants to see have a spectacular season because of who he is, not just what he is. I mean, he's a Georgia quarterback, so Georgia fans root for Georgia. But when you talk about a guy with character, when you talk about a guy that's put in the work, when you talk about a guy that has played his role, continues to play his role, welcomes competition, never flinched when Georgia was looking for a quarterback in the portal last winter, never flinched when there was speculation they may look in the portal this spring. I mean, this is a guy that does things the right way. This is a very successful human being. And you want to see a guy like Gunnar Stockton succeed because of the sort of ambassador he would be and the sort of representative he would be. He already is that ambassador and that representative. And he's got his moment when he came in and heroically finished that SEC title game. And Mike Bobo had to craft a game plan together for a half and come from behind to beat Texas in that game. So to me, Gunnar's already proven a lot. And I really hope he does well because of who he is as a person and what he represents. But as we know, football is it's a cold, hard business. And at the end of the day, does his height enable him to throw over the line of scrimmage without passes batted down? Is the mobility enough mobility to buy enough time? Has he, improved his release so that it's a little bit quicker and maybe those outside edge rushers aren't able to get to him and force the fumble like we saw against Notre Dame? Has he made those improvements? And in all fairness, he's only been evaluated on a game and a half in a spring game. There's 26 or 28 practices left. So, it is a concern when you look at Georgia and we're evaluating this other thing. You're evaluating Georgia on a championship standard. The question isn't, can Gunnar Stockton win games, or is Gunnar Stockton a good quarterback? The question at Georgia, and for every position player, is, are they a championship level player at their position? And that's what remains to be seen. And when you've got a guy like Ryan Puglisi, who's got that NFL arm and that cannon and all that talent, or he wouldn't be here to begin with, it's fair to wonder how much he can push, how much he's picked up on, and what that means in the scope of the quarterback competition. Now, Kirby's told us, he said this with Fields and Fromm in 2018. He said it again recently. He wants the guy that's going to move the team. It's not a matter of arm strength or height or metrics or star rating. When he puts the quarterback on the field, do they move the team? Do they get it done? And there's no way to really know that with Gunnar Stockton until the season gets started. He'll have an opportunity to build some momentum. I do believe he'll be the starter at the beginning of the year. And then part two of this, Kaylee, that makes this a complicated question is, can Gunnar stay healthy for an entire season? We know that in the SEC, you're facing some elite talent. And if we've seen one thing from Gunnar Stockton, it's that he can take a hit. But how many of those hits does he take? I mean, even Stetson Bennett was lost for a period of time with an injury. As tough as he was, he got knocked out of that Florida game, tried to come back and play with a bad shoulder. So you wonder if Gunnar makes it through any SEC quarterback. If you were going to lay odds on any SEC quarterback finishing the season without the injury, based on the numbers, what would it be? 80, 85% due? So right out of the gate, you're looking at a 15 to 20% chance of injury that could cost him at some point of the year. Then you add into it, he's still relatively inexperienced, and Puglisi has a ceiling. So I'm going to kind of be on the fence on this one. I'm going to say it's 50-50 that he finishes the year. The regular season is the starter.
So when it comes to Gunnar and the rankings, as you said before, a lot of these rankings are subjective. They give us an idea of how the outside media views the teams. But the good thing about this is that Gunnar Stockton's going to get to face the 6 quarterbacks from the SEC that were ranked ahead of them. So we'll know by the end of the season how this list stood. Now, in just a minute, we're going to be joined by UGA's athletic director, Josh Brooks. But first, this is On the Beat, presented by Ingles.
It's time to discover the convenience and time savings of contact-free pickup with Ingles Curbside. Just visit shop.ingles-markets.com or download the app. And your Ingles personal shopper gets to work with specialized training on how to select the freshest items for a pre-scheduled pickup. They'll even text you with updates. You pull up to a designated space and your personal shopper delivers your items right to your vehicle. Fresh, fast, and affordable. It's all in the bag. Ingles. Low prices. Love the savings.
So even though we mostly get to talk about Georgia football on this show, you can't take away what Georgia's spring sports have done, dominated in many factors. So let's hear from Josh Brooks on all things UGA sports.
Well, as promised, now we're bringing you Josh Brooks, the Georgia Athletic. Is this year 5, Josh? Is that right? Is this your 5th year?
5, yeah.
Wow, man, time flies. And of course, Josh with the early fame, the Pythagorean Theorem athletic director that managed to cram more Georgia fans into the stadium during COVID than some people thought possible. In fact, was even challenged on that.
I can't spell it. I'm a math guy, not an English guy, so I can tell you about it, but I can't spell it.
And that seems so important at the time. Remember that? Like everyone's like, how are you going to get as many people there under these COVID restrictions as possible? And
that seems like 10 years ago.
It does. Time has flown by, and I'll tell you, Josh, things have just gotten better and better and better for Georgia athletics. Obviously, the Bulldogs won a couple national championships in football since then, but you've had to make, not had to make, but some hires have come about, and they continue to pan out pretty well. You're just now getting back from Waco, where the women's tennis team won a national championship. Tell us a little bit about that experience down there at Baylor.
Yeah, that was great. I was able to head out Early Sunday morning to catch them. Flew into Dallas, drove to Waco, and made it just in time. Obviously there were some weather delays across the country, but able to get in time to watch that championship match. And that is a really, really special team to me because, like you said, I'm in year 5. Well, a lot of those young women on the team were either being recruited or were freshmen when I first got the job. So they've been a very special group to me, and I've got to know them very well. So it was a really great senior group with Dasha, Mel, Mai, Gigi. Been here for 4 years and just great representatives of what it means to be a Georgia Bulldog. Um, Runner up last year, won indoor this year. Dasha won doubles last year, won singles this year, and now to see it all come full circle and to get to go head to head against A&M, who beat us in the final last year, was really, really special. I was glad I got to be there for that moment.
It's great. So that's Drake Bernstein off to a start there. Now, didn't Georgia used to host NCAA tennis tournament? Is there any? I know that there's been a lot of facilities updates since then. What's the future look like there?
Yeah, so we will be hosting in 26 and 27, 2 years in a row.
Okay.
There was there was some pushback and they wanted to move it around to different locations. Obviously, it's a phenomenal home field advantage when you can host it. And there were some schools that wanted to, bounce around. Oklahoma State. This year was at Baylor, and it's been at the main facility in Orlando. So it's bounced around a bit, but we're glad to be getting that back for 26, 27, which will be great, not only for our team, but it's great for the local economy. When we host events like that, whether it be SEC softball championship or national tennis or any of the things we'll be able to host, bringing the track facility online. So really great for the community, and it's a great opportunity for everybody to come out and see our kids compete against high level competition.
So we knew that track would have a pretty great future when you hired Carol Gilbert away, and sure enough, they won the outdoor, yeah, SEC track championship with the men finishing second. Actually saw some grandstands across from the softball field. Looks like you've broken ground over there on the track project as well. Is that, can you catch us up on that? Because people are driving by that, probably seeing that right now.
Yeah, we broke ground on that last August.
Hmm.
And a lot of the work probably didn't get noticed at first because there's a lot of underground utility work that had to be done at first. But now you get to see the grandstand coming up and the track being formed. We anticipate that'll be done by January of 26. So we'll be hosting our first meets in the spring of 2026, so less than a year away. And I think it's going to something that can lead to hosting high school events, potentially USATF, AAU events. We're going to host SEC championships in 2027. So again, another opportunity for us to have a great impact on the town and, hotel beds and restaurants, et cetera. But another world-class facility that's going to give us an edge in recruiting. And, this is Carol's 5th year, and we've had some tremendous success under her already. But we really knew it was going to take time for her to rebuild the roster and the form in which she wanted to build it. And you can start to see that now with us finishing second in men and women indoor. Now the women winning outdoor, the men finishing second outdoor at SECs, heading into nationals. Feel like we're going to be right in the mix for both. And I think with the recruiting classes she's been signing, especially this year, but the years before, we're going to be locked and loaded for many years and excited to be able to compete for championships year after year.
And of course, the Kirby Smart silver lining of this track facility is Kirby gets another practice field, right?
Yeah, he'll get a few practice fields, and we'll get parking as well. I came up through facilities, so I know the damage how hard it is to maintain 1.5 practice fields for a college football team to practice on. So now being able to take that and add a couple fields and really give us versatility in not just the way we practice and functionality, but also when you can rotate and not use the same field every day, it's going to help the life of those fields and where you're not just wearing out the same spots. And then we'll also be able to add some parking spots, which, as you know, and anyone knows on any major college campus, parking is always a premium. So we anticipate in the precinct, we'll be able to add enough parking spots to cover our team, which will be tremendous. So a lot of positives there. And I think what that's going to do on South Millage with having soccer, softball, track, golf, all in that same area is going to make it like a pretty neat Olympic village and really enhance the South Millage area.
Oh, that is really cool. You kind of wonder what else might come up around there. So, another Josh Brooks hire gets it done, and I got to tell you, it was biting the fingernails yesterday watching your softball team play at Duke. They dug themselves a little bit of a hole, but Tony Baldwin and a really young team, and Josh, you may not know it, but this is, I believe, one of only two or three teams that won on the road in a regional. And Georgia hadn't gone on a regional on the road and won in softball since 2009. Really hard to do. And I guess this Georgia softball team, the regular season was tough, but with a younger roster, it looks like Tony's turning the corner right now.
Yeah, and look, all due respect to Duke, they competed very well, but I think this is a testament how difficult the Southeastern Conference is in softball.
Yeah.
We played a lot of tough, close close games this year in softball, and I knew I was like, hey, you know what? We've been through the gauntlet. This young team had to grow up early. This is a very, very young team, so we knew it was going to be I hate the term rebuilding year, but we knew it was going to be a young team. We lost a lot of seniors last year, but this is the point where they've been through the fire. They're getting tested, and now hey, start the game starting off against Florida. It's going to be 0-0. Let's go. Let's start the first pitch and let's see what happens. And I'm proud of this group and excited for this weekend, but excited for the future. You were not shy about talking about the need for softball and baseball enhancements. You've been very outspoken about that, and then I listened to you. I took your advice, and we invested in softball and baseball facilities. And I do think that you're going to see in both those programs, you're going to see the recruiting. I'm not going to say it's going to get better, but I do think it's going to make an impact. And I do think, NIL is going to be an important factor here moving forward. But kids love facilities, and not just because of the bells and whistles and what it looks like in the graphics, but they want to be able to train somewhere. They believe they're going to get better. And I think what we've been able to accomplish at both softball and baseball are world-class facilities where they can train, especially with the indoor capability of not having to worry about inclement weather and the technology pieces. I really think that's going to bolster recruiting and really help both those programs moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's huge, and having just covered the SEC softball tournament, seeing that $38.5 million building. I mean, you say, oh, Oklahoma spent $40 million. Well, guess what? A lot of that was on the field. This field was fine. And so all this technology and all this money actually went into the building. So I know that Tony's excited to be able to recruit to that building, like you said, with a lot of in-state talent. And this technology, Josh, I mean, it's really amazing when you can see how they can set these machines up to emulate pitchers and how the pitchers can, work on their deliveries and the planes they throw on and the rotations. And nobody knows more about that than Wes Johnson. And who would have thought, maybe you, but it would have been far-fetched for me to say, hey, you know what? You hire this guy, you're going to be number one in the RPI after the regular season in 2 years. But what an amazing season for Georgia baseball as they head to the SEC tournament.
Yeah, I was actually texting that same sentiment to a good buddy of mine who I confided in during the search. And I told him, I said, if you'd have told me we'd have had this level of success in the first 2 years, I'm not sure I would have been thought that have been a little greedy, but we believed in what Georgia baseball could become. And I think Wes has instilled that belief, not just in his student athletes, but his staff and all of us. And it's contagious. And so happy for him. He's a great guy who does it the right way. So really excited for them now going in. We're going to be number 5 seed in the SEC. We are number 1. I know the RPI changes day to day, but I think last I saw we were number 1 in the RPI, which should. I'm not on the committee, so I don't have a vote, but that should lead us well to hopefully being a top 8 seed.
Yeah.
18 and 12 in the SEC, which is just it's phenomenal. And we play really well at home, so we'd love to let's host a regional and hopefully host a super regional and then see what happens from there.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, to me, it's 50-50. You go to the College World Series, and it's 50-50 best odds for anybody when you got this much baseball ahead of you, when you got a regional and you're going to play another team that just won in a super. So I feel pretty, we'll see. It's been a minute since Georgia's been to the World Series, but they certainly, they've been talking about it since the beginning. They've had that quiet confidence. That's where they set their goals and, making tournaments and things like that. We haven't had a chance to talk to you on camera since Mike White took Georgia basketball back to the NCAA tournament. This is another coach that you brought in here, and I've seen recently their roster is already projected to be the number 9 roster in the SEC, which there was a time and day when you said, well, that doesn't mean anything. But now when you've got 14 teams making it, and they're already projected to make the tournament next year by Joe Lunardi, I mean, this is, times are a changing with what Mike has done there. And I guess I would just ask you to comment on that, because that was a heavy lift when he took over.
Yeah, people, we all forget, and that's the biggest testament to what Mike has done is he's elevated the expectations very quickly here at Georgia. When we brought Mike in, I think we were 220s in the net.
Yeah, 223, I think.
220, and then the first year he got us in the 150s. Second year got us in the 80s. Third year, we were a 9 seed in the what were we in the 30s in the net going in. That's tremendous growth and progress in just 3 years. And now to think that's the standard now. The standard is we want to be in that tournament every year, and hopefully each year we go a little further and then grow the expectation and standard. But it's something I don't want to take for granted that now we want to create that standard that's just what we expect. We expect to go to the tournament. When I was lucky enough to get this job, I told my staff that we want to get to a point where these are, in every sport, we want to be expecting to be involved in the postseason, and it looks different sport to sport. But me, I love all 21, but there's a lot of pressure here at Georgia on some of the bigger sports, and baseball and basketball and softball, gymnastics, football. They're all part of that, and to see that now to think about football, basketball, baseball all being involved in the postseason in the same year is pretty awesome. And then another fun fact is this has been a year where we've had multiple teams be ranked number 1 in the country at any given time. When you think about equestrian, football, baseball, women's tennis, women's track, that's 5 teams that at one point in time were ranked number 1 in the country out of our 21 teams. That's a pretty amazing stat when you think about it. And then there was one week where women's outdoor track, women's tennis, and baseball were all ranked number 1 at the exact same time. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'd say that's remarkable. One of my favorite Georgia football games of all time, Josh, is the 2019 game when the LED lights made their display and you played Notre Dame, and it was a big win for the Dogs. The crowd was huge in that game. I think they forced like 6 penalties. And where I'm going with this, my producer, Cody Chaffins, is like, Mike, what's up with the fireworks? They did them last year. Is there more coming? And I'm like, yeah, Texas had those cool drones. You're probably thinking, wait a minute. There's a lot of money flying around right now. But what about what you bring to that stadium, Josh? I mean, you've done the renovations. We see how much nicer the concourses are now, and there's more bathrooms, and it's already a much better game day experience. But about those sort of things, about those external things, like with the home schedule you've got this year, I mean, there's going to be plenty of entertainment on the field, but how does all that sort of thing work when you're starting to see this pop up around games and stadium experience?
Yeah, look, it's R&D, rip off and duplicate, steal every idea you can. I'm not that smart, so you better learn to steal the good ideas when you see them. And, the fireworks is something we pushed for a long time, and I got to give credit to our staff, Tanner Steins and others, Matt Bukowski, who pushed and worked with our campus officials to get that done, because it's not as easy and simple as people think it is when you're talking about life safety and the impacts of where the fireworks are going to fall and all that. So there's a lot that went into it, and and I'm thankful for President Moore's support as well. So that was something we brought in. I think that'll become a new nightly tradition. I think we'll save those for night games. The drones are something I don't know right now. They are extremely expensive, and you got to pick and right. We're definitely in a world right now where we have to. I know people don't want to hear this because people want to just spend, but part of my responsibility is to be mindful of budget and balance.
Yeah.
Needs versus wants and things that have a true impact, and I think the fireworks have a definite impact. The red lights and things like that. So. But we always keep an open mind. We always keep looking for the next new idea. But I do have to be responsible for the budget. And they haven't dropping hundreds of thousands of dollars on drones. I'm not sure, unless Dog Nation wants to sponsor it. We can do a drone show with the Dog Nation logo, or maybe Mike Griffith's like signature thing somewhere. I mean, anything's possible, you know.
They may want to drop me out of an airplane as part of the show without a parachute probably, but we'll skip that for unless we get some tens of millions of dollars of oil grant money. That sounds like that might be a Texas thing for a little while with today's NCAA. You're a big part of the NCAA, and as was Kirby. And I was saying recently in a radio interview, see, the fact, Georgia takes care of Georgia. But beyond that, seeing Kirby Smart serve on the NCAA Rules Committee and seeing you in this vice chair role with the Division Council Football Oversight Committee, and being a part of the practice and playing season committee as a chair. I mean, this isn't just taking care of your university. This is helping to move the process forward in collegiate athletics. And obviously, there's been a ton of changes underfoot. I want to start locally, though. I have a story that's published in later today where Kirby Smart's talking about this GM role. And we're seeing a lot of schools that are getting GMs, and Kirby saying, hey, we cover all those bases. We don't need the title. You've been a football operations director and have a coaching background yourself. What are your thoughts on that GM role in general, and how Georgia manages that?
I think first of all, you have to look at that and know that that term gets thrown around a lot, and it means different things in different places. So there's not just one cookie cutter way to do it. And that's probably a little true even when you look at the NFL. And I think each school's got a different dynamic. We've got a highly intelligent, highly involved head football coach. We have a great support staff underneath him. And then I think we've got a phenomenal executive staff when you talk about the people on my exec staff here that work directly with him, and then some other individuals as well. So I think we have such a great working relationship. We've been together a long time. I forgot. I didn't think about the other day. I think I've been working with Coach Smart now. I mean, I don't know if this is the 9th year together.
Wow.
And now I'm a 5th year as AD with him. And I've got a lot of staff members who've been here with him in some form or fashion for 4 or 5 or 6 years. So there's just a lot of great continuity there. So I don't think any of us really ever wanted to just bring someone in from the outside and say, you're the GM, lead this. Like so it's us working together on that. And this is a new world. It's ever evolving. And we're thankful we have a head coach who really gets it and knows what he wants. But in some form or fashion, we will take his lead on that and see how he wants to evolve and how different staff members' responsibilities may evolve. But I feel real good about our working relationship with him. And I guess that just comes with, saying, like I said, working with him together for almost 9 years now.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like, okay, you got a title for somebody doing this, but the real question is, are you handling these responsibilities? And that's what Kirby said. There's somebody that keeps track of the money. There's somebody that looks at the players in the portal in high school or in other programs. So all the same bases get covered. You just don't stick a title on somebody that, I guess, closes the deal. Kirby likes to be that guy. He focuses on relationships, and he doesn't want to take his his finger off the pulse, so to speak, and necessarily delegate that responsibility. I get it. Again, it's not like George is not doing this. It's just you don't have someone in it with that title. So it's pretty clear to me that he's got those bases covered. Josh, I know that we're in a very delicate time in this House versus NCAA case, and there's really not a whole lot that you can say about it. I do know that they have said, that if this case gets approved as we've anticipated, that these changes would be in store on July the 1st, which isn't that far off. And obviously there's a lot of different sorts of provisions, but as we kind of keep our eye on the ball for this ruling, is there anything that, the general public should kind of be aware of or kind of pay close attention to? I guess the roster restrictions, the thing I took away from it is like, okay, you're taking away some roster spots, but Georgia has talked about actually adding scholarships as a result of this, right?
Yeah, I think the great thing for us is once the settlement goes through, it's going to give us the ability to, roster limits will be in place, but there won't be scholarship limits. So we will be able to add over 100 scholarships across many sports, which, again, I want to win in 21 sports. So this was an opportunity for us to really enhance the rosters of several teams and really bolster our recruiting across the board. So I'm excited today, but I'm really excited about the future, especially with the way some of our teams are recruiting, about where we're going to be, 2, 3, 4 years from now. I know this was a phenomenal weekend. I'm not sure we can ever top this weekend that we had, but I think with where we're headed in recruiting, it's exciting. So I think that's one of the key things for us on how we're going to take advantage of it is how we can expand scholarship quantities on a lot of our teams and give us a chance to be really competitive and really deeper on a lot of teams.
All right. Well, I appreciate. Listen, I'm not going to keep digging because I know we're going to get you at the spring meetings here pretty soon, and then we'll see you down in Destin. And I want you to save some of your good material. I know you got some of that left. There's a lot. There's a lot going on. I mean, there's just a lot of exciting things right now,
Hey,
right?
I mean, to recapping this weekend, I mean, it really was special. Think about baseball getting their 18th win in conference, 18-12, like you said, fifth seed in the SEC, looking like they're in great shape for postseason. Softball winning the regional. Now they're headed to super regional play Florida. Women's track winning the SEC championship. Men's track getting second. Golf advancing to the stroke play, the top 30 in nationals, and then obviously women's tennis winning a national championship. To have that happen all in the course of one weekend is just it's pretty insane, and it was just a really really special weekend.
Pretty remarkable. I gotta say this though, Josh, and I gotta ask you because you took over 5 years ago, and at the time it was like, okay, he's never been an AD, but we're gonna stick him in charge of Georgia,
Well,
right?
I've been an AD, been AD at Millsaps. Don't forget.
All right, never,
Don't
never.
hey, don't
I don't want to downplay
go
Millsap.
majors. Go majors. Come on, man. They
Oh,
they were just
for
in
all
the
those
postseason
Mills,
postseason Division III baseball. They were fighting it out in the tournament.
so for all those Millsaps folks, I'm sorry I overlooked and offended you here, but in the course of 5 years, you're talking about COVID, NIL, transfer portal charges, two additional, championship level programs to the SEC. Has it become routine yet? Have you gotten into a routine? Because it seems like every time we turn the page, the earth is kind of quaking under your feet with a lot of changes in college sports.
Yeah, I don't want to sound cliche because this may sound weird, but it's never routine. It's always changing. You have to keep growing and learning. You've never made it. I haven't, even to the day I retire, I've got to have a mindset that I've never made it. I've got to keep growing and learning. Like I said, rip off and duplicate, steal ideas from others, and keep getting better. But this is year 5. I've been through the cycle now. I'm on my 5th year of the calendar of the year of what to expect. So things are becoming more, I don't want to say easy, more natural for me. As doing interviews like this with you or speaking to a donor event or talking to a recruit, I feel a lot more comfortable in these spaces now. I'm sure you remember when I first started, I was probably maybe more fidgety or nervous so it's just maturing and growing as you get older and being more comfortable with yourself and your own skin, going through the fires of losing seasons in a sport, having to fire a coach and hire a coach, the ups and downs of it all. Obviously, we've been through some tough things here, been through some great things. I think it strengthens you, it galvanizes you. You get tougher. There's things I can see on social media that don't bother anymore. That comes to the territory. I'm sure you probably. I don't read your Twitter, but I'm sure if you were to post something today, you'd have probably 80% positive and 20% negative. And I think human nature is to read that, focus on the 10 to 20% negative and let it bother you. Why? Those things don't bother me anymore. They used to. So hopefully that's continued growth and learning in this journey and being stronger and hopefully I'm able to see my vision and articulate it better as I go on. But again, I am no finished product, and this is honestly, if I've learned anything, Mike, it's really it's never about me. It's about student athletes, coaches, and staff. And if I hire great coaches and staff members, then my job is to make their jobs easier, but get out of their way because they're not asking me to pitch, they're not asking me to bat, shoot, anything. They're not asking me to call plays. I'm just the lucky person that gets to sit in this chair and get to support them. So it's never been about me. I'm a former equipment manager, so I understand that more than anybody. And I'm just happy to serve. And I love Georgia. I love Athens, and I'm just blessed.
Yeah, I remember you saying when you took over that your job was to give all your coaches what they needed to win championships, and that was when the evaluation would start. And I'd say that We're probably about there right now. This track facility going up, and Carroll's already winning, in Spectown track. So I guess in the words of Kirby Smart, if it ain't broke, find a way to make it better, right? I guess that's kind of what you do every day. And I really, really appreciate you spending the time and visiting with the audience and, kind of giving them a 10,000-foot view on this past weekend, which was, like you said, historically great. And I'm sure we'll have more news coming out. End of this week, we'll hear a little bit more about the Georgia budget, some of the ins and outs of the projects that you've got going on.
Yeah, we got to cut back on that food in the press box for the press, so we may have to cut back on how we're serving y'all. So,
well, it's all right. You said you're giving us some parking spots now by football, so that sounded pretty good. That's what I heard. That's what I heard out of that. So.
There's a charge with that, right? The donation, Dog Nation parking. Yeah, we'll let you entitle the parking lot as well. The Dog Nation lot sounds really good.
Yeah, I'll get BJ right on that.
Yeah.
Thanks for visiting with us, Josh. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Mike. Go Dogs.
All right, Kaylee, back to you.
Well, first off, what a great guest to have here on the beat. Although I have to say, I'm a little bit disappointed about no drone show.
Well, I get it, right? I mean, all this other money that Josh and the Georgia Athletic Department spending on all these tremendous facilities and enhancing the fan environment at Sanford Stadium. I mean, like I said, I got a feeling that's some Texas oil money that was floating out there and this money to burn, right? But those stadium environments are great. And I meant to actually follow up with Josh. I love it at Foley Field when they do the red lights during the pitching changes. I really, that red light effect is really cool. And, I'll never forget the 2019 Notre Dame game and how the crowd got involved with the, forcing the 6 false starts and motions. I mean, absolutely made a difference, as it did in the 2022 #1 versus #1 Tennessee Georgia game. And Georgia fans have responded between the hedges when Kirby's made the call out. Remember the Arkansas game, Kaylee? It was a noon kickoff, and Kirby called for the Dog fans to come early, and Pittman couldn't even hear himself thinking. Before you knew it, the Hogs were down by 3 touchdowns, and Sam Pittman's just going, oh my gosh, what did I do to deserve this? My first 2 years as Arkansas head coach, I've had to open with Georgia and then play my beginning road game with Georgia. So, poor Sam, having to go through that. But this crowd is fantastic, and I can't wait to see how they're going to respond this season, especially when Alabama comes. So I'd say if you got any hearing sensitivity issues, you may want to bring your earplugs, because I think that Sanford Stadium is going to be as explosive and loud as ever when Alabama takes the field to play against Georgia, when the Dogs are on defense against whoever is at quarterback for the Crimson Tide.
Yeah, and when Texas comes to town, too. If it's anything like how it was when Tennessee came to Georgia last year, yeah, you're going to need to bring 2 sets of headphones in that case. I know you guys touched on this. This is the last thing I want to do, then we'll wrap up, because I feel like this is the one thing that you and I get to share, and that's our love of college softball. And when I got the opportunity to see that the Lady Dogs upset Duke, that is not easy, especially because they didn't take an SEC series all season long, but when it mattered most, the bats were hot, the pitching was great. So excited to see them move on to the Super Regionals.
Yeah, this was a really young team that Tony had, and I'll be honest, I wasn't optimistic. They beat Duke on Saturday, the first time they played them in the double elimination. I believe it was 8-2, and then Duke came back and beat them in the first game Sunday 8-1. And Kaylee, you know how the momentum is in the dugout in a softball game. You're thinking, oh man, Duke's at home. They just won 8-1. They were up 2-0. And they go, well, let's go to Tony Baldwin in the Georgia dugout. And I'm thinking to myself, if he's got any hair left and didn't pull it all out, I mean, and he's just like, you know what? We're going to compete every pitch. We're going to compete every at bat. We're going to stay poised. And doggone if that didn't happen. And, they had that tremendous comeback. Lindy Ray Davis with a big RBI single. And then, of course, late Jaden Goodwin hits the home run in extra innings. And Randy Rolling, this transfer from Cal, was just lights out. Lily Backus pitched really well earlier. When you got your pitching going, like Georgia does right now, as they go to Florida for a best-of-3 Super Regional in Gainesville that starts Thursday, anything can happen. And in 2021, Georgia went there as a big underdog as well and got through Gainesville and went to the World Series. So, those are high aspirations for a young team that really hasn't played their best game yet, but it is possible. We have seen it before. And Tony Baldwin, probably the best hitting coach in the country. And you saw that, the way the bats came alive in the clutch. So Georgia just invested, $38.5 million into that softball facility. It's unbelievable. So much talent in the state, Kaylee. You played travel ball, I think your dad coached it. I had an opportunity to coach in Tennessee. We knew about the talent in Georgia. So to me, that softball program, I think, it's going to continue to go up, and getting to the Super Regionals with this young of a team is going to be some incredible momentum for Tony Baldwin to recruit to.
One thing that it reminds me a lot of too is this conversation that we were having about the men's basketball tournament, because the SEC was so strong this year. Like even some of those teams like a Georgia that maybe didn't have a great SEC record can still be successful because of the level of talent that they've played. And now that you've had Texas and Oklahoma join the conference, it's almost a guarantee that the winner of the Women's College World Series is going to be an SEC team. And we're not going to talk about Texas A&M.
Yeah, no, we don't need to talk about that. Texas A&M's had a really tough spring.
Fumbled the bag.
I don't know what to say about the Aggies. And Georgia still hasn't played there in football, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's a curse or something. But no, you're right. I mean, it'd be crazy to think that an SEC team wouldn't win the Women's College World Series in softball or baseball, for that matter. I mean, baseball is an outstanding SEC sport as well. I mean, really dominating. You hate to say it, but you're like, well, basketball did great. Baseball's football. You need football to get back, right? But I think it's because the schedule is so tough and the league is so deep. I feel like they kind of beat themselves up a little bit. And, these SEC teams really weren't at their, certainly Georgia wasn't at their best by the end of the year. I mean, they're starting Carson Beck was out with an injury. Other guys were banged up and, not to make excuses, but I do think that the SEC football schedule takes a lot more out of these teams than maybe the Big Ten, which was a little bit more top heavy last year.
So that's going to wrap up today's episode of On the Beat. A few things before we head out. No show next week. Enjoy your Memorial Day, but Mike will be back on Dog Nation Daily next Wednesday to talk about all things spring meeting. And then, of course, don't forget to subscribe to our Dog Nation YouTube channel to get notifications on any breaking news that we might have, as well as any of our shows that we do. In the meantime, you guys enjoy your Memorial Day, and we'll see you right back here in 2 Mondays from now.